Que se extendió en la prensa, y es que pudo haber sido un accidente por una sedación de los niños. Ustedes han negado reiteradas veces que jamás a sus hijos para dormirles.
You know, I'm not even gonna answer that question, I'm afraid. All I'm gonna say is I'm Madeleine's mummy. I know she was taken from that apartment and she's out there. And I want her back. I mean, that is all. I mean, everything else, I'm sorry, is rubbish.
Datin Matangri PM, May 3rd, 2007. Kate McCann returned to her vacation apartment, Unit 5A in Praia da Luz, Portugal, after dinner with friends. Within minutes, she walked into the bedroom where her 3 children slept. And then came the words that would haunt the world for years to come. They've taken her. Not, where is she? Not Madeleine, but a statement. Calm, complete, and devastating. In most child disappearances, the first response is chaos, panic, calling the child's name, running through rooms, opening closets, checking bathrooms. Not here, not this time. Kate McCann didn't ask a question, she gave an answer. From that moment, the Madeleine McCann case became more than a tragedy. It became a mystery. A 3-year-old vanished without a sound, without a struggle, without any evidence of a break-in. There were no fingerprints, no surveillance footage, no witness accounts, no foreign DNA, and, most haunting of all, no body. But while the authorities hesitated, the public didn't. Investigators, forensic analysts, psychologists, and everyday people began piecing together the fragments that didn't add up. Cadaver dogs alerting to death in the apartment and the family's rental car, blood behind the sofa, and a mother's behavior that seemed too composed. What if no one took Madeleine? What if she never left that room alive? This wasn't just a story about a missing child. It became a story about fear, a mistake, and the desperate cover-up that may have followed. For months, the official narrative was clear. Madeleine had been kidnapped. But in July 2007, 2 very different investigators entered the scene. Eddie and Keela, elite British sniffer dogs, trained to detect the scent of human decomposition and blood. Their findings shattered that clean narrative. Eddie, the cadaver dog, alerted in 5 key places. Behind the sofa in the McCann's apartment, in the wardrobe of a bedroom, on a piece of Kate McCann's clothing, on the key fob, and inside the trunk of the family's rental car. Keela, the blood detection dog, independently confirmed alerts behind the same sofa and in the same trunk. These were not random alerts. They were precise and consistent. And they didn't point to a stranger. They pointed inward, toward the McCanns. Behind the sofa, forensic teams found a small trace of blood. It had been degraded by time, cleaning products, and humidity. But low copy number DNA testing, controversial but admissible in some UK cases, retrieved a partial match. 15 out of 19 markers consistent with Madeleine's DNA. Not enough for a conviction, but far too much to ignore. Even more troubling, the rental car had only been acquired 24 days after Madeleine's disappearance. And yet, the cadaver scent lingered inside. Hair and DNA samples were also found, again, partially matching Madeleine. There was no reason for her DNA to be there, not if she had been taken and never returned. Why would the scent of decomposition appear on a Bible Kate McCann kept close? Why would it show up on her clothes? The evidence didn't shout, it whispered, but it whispered with consistency. And it didn't say, someone came in. It said, someone never left. In every missing child case, time is everything. It tells us what's possible, what's not, and who had the chance. But in the case of Madeleine McCann, the timeline doesn't bring clarity. It collapses under its own weight. According to the McCanns and their friends, nicknamed the Tapas 7, they had been following a routine. Dinner at the nearby restaurant while taking turns checking on their sleeping children every 30 minutes. On paper, it sounded responsible, almost rehearsed, and that may be exactly what it was. No restaurant staff could confirm those regular check-ins. No surveillance footage supported the pattern. Neighboring guests saw nothing consistent with back-and-forth monitoring. And within the group itself, statements conflicted. Some said the first check was at 8:30 p.m., others at 8:45. Jerry claimed he checked Madeleine at 9:05. Jane Tanner reported seeing a man carrying a child at 9:15. That man turned out to be another tourist holding his own daughter. Then came the handwritten schedule. found not in the original police files, but later in Kate's belongings. A neat list of who checked which apartment, at what time. It wasn't part of any official statement. It looked less like a memory and more like a reconstruction, something made after the fact, not during it. Real trauma is messy. Real timelines are filled with fragments. But this one, it felt too clean. And then, the dramatic detail. Kate claimed she found the bedroom window open, the curtain billowing in the wind, the shutter raised. It was the kind of image that made headlines. But early police photos showed the curtain still. No signs of forced entry, no debris, no fingerprints. The shutter could only be opened from the inside, unless brute force was used, which it wasn't. The crime scene didn't tell a story of intrusion. It told a story of arrangement. So when Kate McCann ran from the room screaming, "They've taken her," was it panic, or was it performance? In criminal investigations, words matter, but so does silence. When police questioned Kate McCann, she refused to answer 48 key questions. Not one or two, 48. Among them, did you give Madeleine any medication that night? Did you open the bedroom window yourself? Did Madeleine ever sleep with her siblings? Her silence wasn't illegal. Under Portuguese law, she had the right. But in the eyes of the public, it wasn't just silence. It was protection. From what? No one could say for certain. But the weight of what wasn't said hung heavier than any denial. Then there was the book. A Bible Kate reportedly kept close after Madeleine's disappearance. Cadaver dogs alerted to it. A book? Something handheld. Intimate? That detail, small as it seemed, whispered of contact, of proximity, of mourning, not abduction. Still, supporters of the McCanns claimed the dogs weren't reliable, that DNA tests were too weak. That contamination explained the results. But if contamination were the reason, why did every alert point to one family, one car, one apartment? No other units in the resort triggered those dogs. No other belongings. Just the McCanns. Forensics by nature doesn't scream, it doesn't accuse, it simply points. And what it pointed to, never left apartment 5A. Even more unsettling, Kate's first words, "They've taken her," sounded less like a reaction and more like a line. She didn't shout Madeleine's name. She didn't tear through the apartment. She didn't check closets or bathrooms. She ran outside repeating a phrase, over and over, "They've taken her." That's where suspicion begins. Not because it proves guilt, but because it doesn't fit. If the theory is true, if Madeleine McCann died in that apartment on May 3rd, then what followed wasn't born from cruelty. It was born from fear. Kate McCann wasn't just a mother. She was a doctor, trained in anesthetics. She knew what sedatives did. She understood their effects, their risks, and the consequences of misuse. If she had given something to keep the children asleep, something too strong or simply too much, and Madeleine never woke up, then the moment of realization would have been catastrophic. And in that moment, fear might have taken over everything else. Fear of losing her medical license, fear of being arrested in a foreign country, fear of being separated from her other two children, fear of being branded. Not as a grieving mother, but as the woman who killed her daughter with drugs. Fear doesn't always lead to confession. Sometimes it leads to calculation. The window is opened, the curtain staged, the door left ajar, the scream rehearsed. A cover-up begins, not out of malice, but desperation. And once it begins, it's almost impossible to stop. Every decision afterward, hiring lawyers, controlling the media, suing a police chief who published a book, becomes part of the same machinery. Not of justice, but of survival. Other mothers have done the same. In the US, Casey Anthony. In Australia, Rachel Fitzner. Each one faced an unthinkable loss and tried to bury it beneath an even more unthinkable lie. The McCann case may be no different. A mother paralyzed by the horror of what just happened. A family spiraling into self-preservation. And a world that never stopped asking, was this fear or guilt? Years have passed. Investigations opened, closed, and rebranded. Suspects came and went. Yet the most haunting details still point inward, toward the apartment, the car, the silence. Kate and Jerry McCann were eventually declared arguidos, formal suspects, by Portuguese police in 2007. But less than a year later, that status was lifted. No charges, no confession, no body. Instead, we were left with contradictions. Why did the cadaver dogs alert to 5 separate places connected to the McCanns, but to no other apartment, car, or object? Why did Kate refuse to answer 48 questions, simple, factual inquiries? Why did a mother say, "They've taken her," before even checking the room? Why was a handwritten timeline discovered later? Too neat, too precise, too delayed. And if Madeleine really was abducted by a stranger, where is the proof? There were no signs of forced entry, no foreign fingerprints, no credible eyewitnesses, no camera footage, not even a trace of struggle. The resort's surveillance system caught nothing. No one walking with a child, no one suspicious, nothing. Instead, all the anomalies live within the walls of apartment 5A. The places the dogs alerted, the blood behind the sofa, the clothing, the Bible, the story, and the silence. That's why the public never let go. Not because of outrage, but because something always felt off. The truth didn't vanish. It just got buried. If Madeleine McCann died by accident, the most tragic part of her story isn't the moment she stopped breathing. It's everything that came after. Because if that first decision to hide the truth was made in fear, then every step since has been an attempt to hold that lie together. Public statements, media campaigns, legal threats, television appearances, donations, lawsuits, silence. Over time, the role of the grieving parent becomes not just real, but essential. The lie can't be undone, because to undo it is to lose everything: reputation, freedom, family. And somewhere along the way, even the liar may begin to believe the lie. Psychologists call it cognitive accommodation. The brain reshapes memory to align with survival. The person stops remembering what truly happened and starts defending what must be protected at all costs. That's why this story won't go away. It's not just about Madeleine anymore. It's about how far someone will go to protect the life they still have, even after the one they lost. No one has ever been convicted. No body has ever been found. No court has declared guilt. But the questions remain, not wild, not conspiratorial, but painfully logical. Why so many contradictions? Why so much silence? Why does the evidence point to a quiet death and a careful rewrite? When justice fails to speak, stories take its place. But stories don't bury children. People do. Madeleine McCann's case doesn't sit neatly in any box. It is not officially solved, but it is not truly unsolved either. It floats in the space in between, where evidence whispers and silence thickens. The theory that she died in apartment 5A and that her death was hidden out of fear, not malice, has never been proven. But it has never been disproven either. That's what makes it so hard to let go. Not because we're certain, but because no other version makes as much sense. This is not about vengeance, not even about guilt. It's about recognition that something happened here that no one has been able to explain away. A child vanished. The window didn't show signs of break-in. The curtain moved only in memory. The dog smelled death where no one should have died. The parents offered a timeline too polished, too controlled, and one sentence echoed louder than all the evidence. They've taken her. But the truth may have stopped breathing long before those words were spoken. The McCann case reminds us of something uncomfortable, that not all lies are told out of cruelty. Some are born from sheer, blinding fear, and once told, they become prisons, places where even love is held hostage by shame. Maybe Madeleine's death, if it happened that way, wasn't the act of a monster. Maybe it was the result of a single desperate decision, followed by 1,000 others, all meant to hide the first. And that's what makes this story so hard to forget. Because it isn't just about a missing girl. It's about what happens when the truth is too heavy to hold. So we bury it. But the world never stopped looking. Not just for Madeleine, but for that one thread, lost in the dark, that might still pull the truth into the light.